Good afternoon to our viewers in Germany and good morning to our viewers in the United States. Hello, I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and I'm tuning in today from Washington, D.C., where we will hold our German-American conference today and tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in for today's Kaffeepause. This is an opportunity to check in with journalists based in Berlin to talk about the news stories behind the headlines, and today I am delighted to welcome Jochen Buchsteiner. He has been political correspondent for the Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung in Berlin since 2023, and before that he spent 20 years as a foreign correspondent for the FAZ. Herzlich willkommen. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I think we have to start with the news that's really consumed a lot of attention over the weekend, and that is the attack on Israel by Iran. Can you share with us what the reaction has been like in Berlin?
Well, the Berlin government had been shocked, as all governments, of course, and Chancellor Scholz, who is currently in China, has interrupted or adapted his itinerary and gave a press conference or a little press briefing condemning the attack and gave a warning to Iran to continue this path, whatever that means. He also called for de-escalation for everyone involved, and of course he said we stand with Israel. So you have the whole mix of possible perspectives of this on this conflict.
And I guess there are real concerns that Israel may launch a counterattack. And I'm curious if you've been able to pick up on anything related to what the German government might be doing to avoid that. In some of the reporting that I saw from today, it sounded as if not just the chancellor, but also the foreign minister, the defense minister, other members of the cabinet have been really trying to encourage Israel not to take a strong action right away. But have you heard of anything?
No, that's correct. I think they are in alignment with the Americans in that respect, and they already from all sides of the government have asked for restraint, so that including the Israelis, of course, too. And I'm not sure what the government would be doing if Netanyahu takes another path. We will have to see that. And also I don't know what the Germans will do if this whole thing is going to escalate, because as you all know, the right to exist of Israel has been declared a raison d'être for Germany, and that has actually never been challenged or proven. So if there is an escalation, I think there is some heavy decision making ahead in Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. This is a question that has never really been tested in this way, and so this is a tremendous development and one worth watching. We've been talking mostly about the government's response to what happened in Israel, but I'm also very curious to know sort of what's going on in Germany. Since October 7th, we've obviously seen lines drawn between pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian groups in Germany. Has this incident created sort of a further calcification of those lines, or caused people to take to the streets again?
Well, that happened in the beginning, particularly, and I think it was for parts of society and the political groups. It has been an awakening, because it was for the first time that we saw how widespread anti-Semitism has become in Germany, and that this is particularly coming from migration groups from Islam countries, and that made many people upset, and also it's had an impact on this whole migration debate that is going on in Germany for quite a while. So I think this is perhaps the most striking consequence of this for the well, interior landscape of Germany.
Mhm. A member of our audience is curious about the issue of Germany being taken to the court in The Hague for war crimes because it's the second largest supplier of weapons to Israel, which have been used in Gaza. I guess the question here is, how is that playing out in Germany? It's certainly something that's been in the press lately.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, we are part of this government is especially the Green Party, which is very much in favor of multilateralism and international law, and so it's of course a bit awkward for them now to be on this side of the argument. On the other hand, it's quite clear if you see from where these claims come. I think it makes it more easy for Germans to be cool on that and just wait.
So you mentioned at the outset that Chancellor Scholz is in China at the moment, that he's had to adapt his plans a little bit because of this attack. But let's talk a little bit about the trip to China. He's traveling with a very large delegation, including several federal ministers and a number of key business leaders. It seems reminiscent of some of the big visits to China that Olaf Scholz's predecessor, Angela Merkel, made to the country. What do you think Scholz wants to get out of this visit, and what do you think might come out of the trip?
Yeah, well, I think it's as with all his predecessors, he is, of course, trying to create a good atmosphere for German businesses in China. But at the same time, he's now trying to insert this new dogma of de-risking, as we call it, and as the Americans call it too. I think another point is that he wants to have a level playing field. So there are some German companies that complain about unfair competition, about discrimination within China. So I think he wants to talk about that. But also there's Ukraine, and perhaps some of you remember his first trip to China, which was heavily contested, especially in the West. And then there was this moment where President Xi spoke out against the use of nuclear force with regards to Russia, and at least Scholz and his spin doctors came back to Berlin and said, "You see, this is why this visit was so important, because now there is a clear line driven by the Chinese, and that is going to help us in this conflict." So I think he's expecting something similar to this, perhaps a bit stronger of Xi. Let's see if this is going to happen. I think he's going to meet him tomorrow. Yeah, but as things stand, probably Iran will be in the headlight, and but still, Ukraine will be part of the agenda too.
So as you said, I mean, obviously part of the point of this trip, and I think that has to do with the size of the delegation as well, are the business ties between Germany and China. And I think one of the things that is interesting to follow is last summer, the German government released its China strategy, and it seemed clear coming out of that strategy that the government in Berlin and the private sector in Germany aren't completely in sync on their positions vis-a-vis China. Do you think that that's something that might be on display on this trip, or do you think that the government and the business sector, the private sector, will present more of a united front and really try to develop stronger economic ties with
I
China?
I would think the latter, because I mean the China strategy, or so-called China strategy, is pretty vague,
Yeah.
and it opens up the field for all kinds of relationships by saying they are at the same time a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. So you can pick what you like in a way. And as of now, there haven't been many consequences out of
Hmm.
this China strategy. And my feeling is that it's pretty much business as usual going on. And I mean, it's not the only field of world politics where Germany is trying to pursue something like a middle path without letting anyone know, or hoping not too many other countries take notice. But I think, especially in the Chancellor's office, they don't see their interests in total alignment with the US interest. So they're trying to get a bit more of freedom.
Hmm. So let's shift to domestic politics. I generally like to begin the Kaffeepause by asking our guests what the political mood is like in Berlin. So how is the Stimmung, or is it completely overshadowed by these attacks on Israel?
No, I don't think that. Well, let's see how this whole thing is going to develop. But as of now, it's of course the big story of yesterday and today. But I think the overall mood is more um, um, is quite somber, and it has a lot to do with the situation in which Germany is politically and economically. So I think lots of people have kind of woke up to a new situation, and they feel that the old model on which Germany was built is kind of crumbling,
Hmm.
uh, but they don't really know where to go from here. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
we had for decades we based our economy on export to China. We based our energy on Russia, and our security on the US. And on all these three fields, things have changed or are about to change, and that, well, shows us that we have to, and shows the politicians that they have to find some alternative ways. The economy is not in a good shape, as probably everyone knows here, and there's a feeling also the whole migration issue has become kind of toxic politically, but also economically, and on top of this, we have a government which looks a bit disoriented and as not on top of things, and that doesn't make a easy feeling.
Hmm. So let's come back to that in just a second, but particularly since you mentioned the fact that much of Germany's development was based on cheap energy from Russia. It was actually a year ago today that the last of Germany's nuclear power plants were taken offline. And at the time, it was somewhat controversial, particularly given the energy crisis that Germany was dealing with, because it had reduced its import of energy from Russia. So how has Germany fared without nuclear power? At the time, there were concerns that there would be a sharp uptick in electricity prices. There were concerns that Germany would not be able to meet its climate goals. A year into Germany without nuclear power, where do things stand?
Well, I think there's a growing awareness that this decision of phasing out the nuclear power was a mistake. And if you just look at what happened in the CDU, I mean, this is the party that has legislated this phase out, and in their new principal program, they are now talking about, of course, we have to re-enter atomic energy in the fourth and fifth generation. And so there is a feeling that without nuclear energy, it will be very hard to reach the net zero targets. And then you also see there was this, I mean, there's a bunch of countries that have come together and at the last climate change summit and vote to triple their efforts for nuclear energy because they just see it as the only chance to reach net zero. And I think at some point the Germans and our government, perhaps the next one only, will realize that without this we will lag behind and we can't compensate this with green energy.
So you mentioned sort of the disarray in Berlin at the moment, and obviously we've seen a drop in the chancellor's popularity. I'd be interested in hearing you tell us about his standing, about the standing of other key officials in the government, people like Robert Habeck, Christian Lindner, Annalena Baerbock, or even Boris Pistorius. And I'm curious, sort of, how is the Ampel, how is the traffic light coalition holding up at this point?
Well, not very good. If you look at the polls, I just found the latest polls, which so you have like roughly a third of the German voters would be voting for the Ampel coalition if there were elections tomorrow. I mean, that is like this for quite a while now. So it doesn't go up. And at the same time, you have the AfD is not growing at the moment, but I think this has something to do with this new party that has come up, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht. CDU is comparably stable, around 30%. So for at least 6 months or so, we have a feeling that there is a change of government ahead, and I think this is not really motivating the ministers of this coalition. You basically still see a lot of hin und her, a lot of arguments. The latest one being about the Hintergrundsicherung, which is a project by a Green minister, and most of the projects that have come through, like the legalization of cannabis, or now the so-called Mitbestimmungsgesetz, which is a law to better the situation of trans persons, are seen as well, perhaps nice to have, if at all, but not really at the center of things. And everybody expects the government to tackle the real stuff, which is basically the economy. On the other hand, the situation, the international situation. And there's a lot of disappointment in the public. So I don't see this changing. And my suspicion would be that we are going on like this for the next year until the election.
And I guess, what what do you think this political situation, this political atmosphere means for the European parliamentary elections, which will take place in June, but also the three elections in the three Neue Bundesländer in the eastern part of Germany? Do you think that
Well,
this will have an impact?
I suppose it will be not very successful for the Ampel coalition, all of these elections.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting question is, or will be, how strong the fringe is going to be, especially on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, of course, the European elections always have a tendency to strengthen the right wing and left wing parties because people think it doesn't matter that much. So I expect quite a good result for the AfD there, and in the three Ostbundesländer, it will be a disaster for the Ampel.
Mm-hmm.
Some parties don't even will make the 5% threshold.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there will be this will be a very uneasy month coming up. Maybe most interesting question is how the CDU is going to present herself and their results, because I think Merz has managed to really turn around the party. It's not a Merkel party anymore, and he achieved this by without big problems. So the Merkelianer people, they didn't protest, and this is quite an achievement, I find. And now you have a conservative party, a Big Tent party, which is much more conservative than it used to be, and so perhaps it will cost the AfD a few, or maybe even some more votes.
Mm-hmm. So sticking with the situation in the East, and particularly Thuringia, we've had several guests over the last few months who have pointed to the election in Thuringia as the one that they are the most concerned about in terms of how strong the AfD showing could be. Just a couple of days ago, there was a debate between two political figures important in Thuringian politics. One of them was the CDU's leading candidate, Mario Vogt, but the other one was the AfD head in the state, Björn Höcke. And if I understand it correctly, Höcke was actually banned from media appearances, but he was on this television debate, and it was seen as sort of an opportunity for the CDU to gain some ground, gain some traction against the AfD. From what I read, it seems as if sort of the results were mixed. Some people felt that Vogt did well against Höcke. Others were a little bit more critical. Um, I'm sure that you sort of followed this debate a little bit. What were your thoughts on it, and what does it tell us about the sort of mood in Thuringia? Do you think that the CDU might be able to claw back some of those votes?
Yeah, I mean, for Vogt, it was first of all, it was a courageous first in German media. I personally support this way of taking on the AfD. I think that the demonization policy has failed because the party has become stronger and more radical. So I think it's a good try, a good attempt to tackle them in a different way. And I think Mario Vogt had some good points. I think what he really managed to show is the difference between a bourgeois, pluralistic party as the CDU is in comparison to a ethnic centered völkische party that the AfD is. At least people like Höcke represent that. So I think he made a strong point there. On the other hand, I think that also Höcke probably this thing served his interests too, because he was able to present himself as someone who had been demonized so far, and that he's not such a bad man. So there was at some point he said, "Ich hasse niemanden, I hate nobody," and also I mean, the AfD is not the entire program is bollocks or radical. So he also had some points where probably people say, well, this sounds quite reasonable. Why is this guy called Nazi by everyone? So in that respect, he made some points too. How this whole thing will play out, we'll have to see. For Vogt, of course, it's an achievement to present himself as the actual contender of Höcke, and because as of now it was the Ministerpräsident Ramelow who was seen as the strong counterweight, and since he didn't go there, he doesn't want to talk to Höcke, and so Mario Vogt did, and also you can see it in the polls. So the CDU is the second strongest party now in Thuringia. So I think it was quite good for Vogt's appearance and popularity.
You mentioned a little bit earlier this new party that's appeared on the scene, the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, that carries the name of its party leaders, Sarah Wagenknecht. I'd be interested in hearing sort of your thoughts on whether they're gaining traction and how this party is positioning itself. Of course, it comes out of the left party, the Linkspartei, which has roots in the East, being sort of a successor party of the PDS. But it seems almost as if Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht is not just appealing to voters on the left, but also to voters on the far right. Hence your comment about it maybe taking some votes away from the AfD. Can you share with us sort of what the standing of that group is at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fresh party, and I think they still have a lot of problems in just organizing and set up the whole thing. But they will be competing in the European elections as well as in East Germany. And if you look at the polls, they are between 10 and 15% in East in these Länder of the German East, which is quite a lot if you take into consideration that it has just started. And I think this has basically two reasons. One is Sarah Wagenknecht is one of the few, I would say, charismatic politicians in Germany. So many people are impressed by her, even those who are politically on a very different side. And another part, I mean, if the AfD would be run by her, I don't know what numbers you would see there. And the second reason for their success is that they build something. They put some politics together which fit quite neatly. So for those of you who are familiar with the British system, there's a term called Blue Labour. This is basically what she is doing. A left party, left on economics, on economic policies, but socially conservative, pro-nation, in a way almost nationalistic. That is something that appeals to a lot of voters, and the AfD, you must not forget, has quite a liberal, in the German sense, liberal economic program. So whereas Sarah Wagenknecht really appeals to people who wants to have a big state, lots of social care, these kind of things, but at the same time they want to be just feel good as Germans and don't want to, and still want to call a man and a woman. So this whole woke stuff is she's very much against it. I think this is quite an attractive package for many.
So as we come to a close, I'd like to sort of feed in two audience member questions that take us back to the energy issue that we were talking about a little bit earlier. One person is curious where the nuclear energy question stands now in view of growing tensions in the Middle East. And I guess the sort of corollary to that, and one of the questions that we often get at the American Council on Germany is, do you think that there is any likelihood that Germany will return to nuclear power, or is that completely something that's part of history?
No, well, as I said, I think we will come there, and it's might sound a bit surprising because Germany has a very strong view on nuclear power, like historically. But if this whole net zero targets mean anything, and at the same time economic success means anything, you can't balance these two without nuclear energy. And that is what more and more people are seeing. So I suspect when Friedrich Merz takes over as chancellor next year, that this will be something like the entry price for coalition negotiations.
Yep.
That his partner is trying to pave the way for a return of nuclear energy.
And sort of related to the whole energy situation, another audience member points out that with the LNG export terminals being finished in Texas and Louisiana and the German import terminal being readied in the North Sea, how likely is it that U.S. natural gas will be used as a bridge fuel in Germany?
I think it will be used. We need bridge fuels. We need bridges. Even if we go back to nuclear energy, this will take many, many years. And in the meantime, of course, we need to compensate for what green energy doesn't give. And this will be gas in all forms. It will be even coal. And so I think the Americans won't have to worry too much. We will still take some stuff.
Well, Jochen Buchsteiner, herzlichen Dank. Thank you for being with us for today's Kaffeepause. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope that we can have you as a guest for the Kaffeepause again sometime in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much.